Yeah, so tell me a little bit about you and how you became a dating coach. I know we kind of talked a little bit, before we started recording, but I know that's a big question. Like, who are you? And I'm very interested in kind of what you do. I told you that I don't. I had one guest who was a love coach, so I guess similar, maybe some similarities, but probably I have no idea, maybe not. So, but anyway, yeah, curious to hear kind of your journey and how you're where.
Sure. Well, I won't start from way the beginning, but I am a mother of, my name is Maria, and I'm a
Yeah.
mother of three kids. My oldest is 33, and my middle daughter is 22, and my youngest is 12. So,
Oh wow, nice. Spread
yes,
them out.
you bet.
Yeah.
So my journey into my dating coach basically began in December 2019, when I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. And my journey started January 2021 when 2020 when I started my chemo.
Okay.
And in March, I don't know if you know Kelly Filardo.
I do not know
She
that name.
she's so awesome for anybody that wants to learn how to write a book. She's amazing. And so she had this online, she had this in person, basically training shop how to write a book.
Okay.
Well, I was bedridden, so I couldn't go anywhere. So I was kind of disappointed because I've always wanted to write a book.
Okay.
And then anyway, so I contacted her and about it, and I said I can't make it. I want to, but I can't. But then March and COVID hit, so she had to do it virtually.
Okay.
So I was excited. So I did that. I took her course in bed. I was bedridden, and I learned how to write a book. In August that year, I ended up publishing How to Find and Keep the Man of Your Dreams, a book. I became a best-selling author that year, and
Wow.
then January 2021, I ended up writing a 10 book romance series, and I have three more to publish. My 5 minute journal, and successful to secrets to successful dating over 40.
Awesome.
And yeah, and I'm translating my 5 minute journal into Portuguese as well. So
Wow. Amazing. I'm really inspired. So basically it took you like 5 months to write the first book.
mhm.
Okay, yeah, that's not like a huge amount of time, but
and then
that's awesome. Yeah.
January 2021 to June is when I did my 10 book series.
Wow. So it's kind of like fiction? Is that what you mean?
It's romance.
Romance. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think I've ever read a romance novel. Um, I do like the show Virgin River on Netflix.
Oh,
And
okay.
those are like based on the Robin Carr books or
Oh yeah.
whatever her name
Hmm.
is. And so anyway, that's like my movie mind. I'm like, oh, well, I saw the movie. So anyway, and what's the other show? Sweet Magnolias. Those are
Oh yeah.
books. Yeah. So I'm like, well, the shows are
Nice.
pretty good. So I'm a hopeless romantic at heart. I like to
Nice.
write poetry and stuff. So I'm
That's awesome.
so yeah, and then okay, so as far as like writing the book about relationships, I mean, how did that come about? Are you just basing it off of your experiences, or have you been like a researcher in this area? Like, how did you kind of
Um,
come
I
up with this stuff?
I haven't done much research. I did a little bit, but mostly my book is basically my experiences.
Okay.
And the funny thing is that with my book, I have more men buying my book than women. So,
Nice.
which is
Like
funny.
Nicholas Sparks writing the Notebook and stuff, and
Yeah.
it's a guy version. No, I'm just
Yeah.
uh,
So yeah, so I thought that was funny, but my book is for both, for men and women.
okay.
Basically for Like I said, I wrote it off of my because of my experiences, and I think everybody deserves someone nice in their life,
Yeah, of course.
and be happy with. So my book is about basically asking women what they're looking for, and basically teaching women what men want and looking for.
Okay.
So in my book, there's stuff you can laugh at, kind of like joking in a way, the way I put things. And
Okay.
I'll give you an example. Men are like fishermen when they go fishing.
Okay.
When they go fish and they catch something, you either keep it or throw it back.
Okay.
So for a
Yeah.
man's side, basically what that person is looking for, because in my book, in one area you can read that a man won't want a woman in his life without having his life in order. Basically, in the meantime, it's just to play, basically.
Say that again. A
So
woman won't want a man whose life is not in order. No.
no, a man won't want a woman until his life is in
Oh,
order.
right. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I said
Yeah,
it backwards.
no worries.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Interesting. Okay.
just
Yeah.
little things like that that makes you think and basically look at yourself. That's why for me dating in my dating coaching program, I have um, there's 8 areas that I talk about in my dating coach. One is effective communication.
Okay.
Another one is how to set boundaries
Okay.
and build trust and core values, commitment, confidence, being intimate, but not in a sexual way, and date with money as well. It's very important in a relationship. So those are the core values that I teach. Each course is separate, or you can buy the big one. I'm building
Cool.
that at the moment. So
Awesome. Wow, you got a lot going on. That's amazing.
mhm.
And then you started a podcast too, right?
Yes, a podcast is basically I introduce pretty much everyone from all walks of life, because I like to connect with people and I like to connect people. And
Mhm.
so my podcast talks about pretty much any business or anything that someone has to offer to somebody. And
Mhm.
so I do interview that, and because the name that I chose, Live Table Talk, is basically it's live, and at the table is where everybody makes the most important decisions of their life. So it's sort of like being around a table and talking to somebody, and but it's virtual.
Okay,
So
that's cool. So do you ever do like, okay, there's this relationship person because I listen to radio. Um,
mhm,
it's she it's Dr. Wendy Walsh, and she does like a lot of like TikTok and Instagram live videos, and then even when she's on the radio, she does like Q&A from people. It's always
mhm.
really good, like the questions, and sometimes the questions are like really complicated, like what should I do if my boyfriend's cheating on me, kind of stuff like that, right? Or like I found his journal and I found this, or
Yeah,
so sometimes it's really dramatic, and then I mean,
yeah.
not that it's always good that we're entertained by people's problems, but it is a little entertaining. So
Mhm.
do you ever do that, like question and answer, like on social media, where people just can like write in their questions and then you kind of do more like an interactive thing, or you just kind of stick to like the coaching one-on-one kind of stuff?
I right now it has been one-on-one, but yeah, that's something I want to do as well. Go live and basically answer any question that anybody has. But my way of teaching my courses are basically I'm not the type of coach that shows you how to talk to a woman or talk to a man kind of thing. I'm more on the deeper side.
Okay.
So I'm more of building your confidence and all of those 8 boundaries. I think it's important once you have those core values. It's like a foundation for your home, basically.
Okay.
So that's what I teach the most.
That's cool.
But if they have any other questions, yeah, I'll answer it, no problem.
Okay. All right. Let me try to ask you a question. And I know I emailed you this. And then if we don't, if you don't like the answer to this or whatever, we don't have to use it. But so, because the thing that I'm really curious about, and I've done over 100 episodes of my podcast, and a lot of them are just interview like this, talking to people. And I have it in the back of my mind, like I'd love to talk about kind of what is it like to date people when you have like a decent amount of self-awareness of your own symptoms, right? Like, okay, I have a diagnosis, and like, when it gets bad, this is what it can look like, when it's good.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think maybe some people could be very discouraged by the idea of like, okay, well, if you're a person, I'm trying not to sound like all like stigmatizing with the language, right? Like, if you're a person with mental illness, what do you do?
Yeah.
Well, like, right, what if I was on like I've done a lot of meeting people online, which that's like a whole episode we could do on that.
Yeah.
And I've made some unhealthy decisions too, as far as like, hooking up with people. I've done a
I
lot of
think
that.
everybody has in their life.
Yeah, yes. And anyway, and so I'm like, oh man, I'm really good at meeting people online, but not in real life. So anyway, but it's kind of like, I think so my question is kind of like, what do you disclose? And because you were talking about boundaries, so I feel like it's kind of maybe in the boundary territory, because it's like you do want people to know like who you are. And I think it's like, if you get it, right? If you say too much, and obviously that could be anything, right? Could be like, oh, I lost my spouse 5 years ago, or like, and then it's like, do you want your first date to be this like unloading of like who you really are? Because maybe you're fearful like they're gonna like run away if you say too much. But then when do you get to the like, because for me, I'm a fairly open person. And I feel like if I was to sit down with someone and go, oh, well, I have a podcast on mental health, right? If I said that on a first date, then they would be like, well, why are you talking about mental health? Right? I'd be like, well, because I have problems, right? Or whatever. Anyway, I
Well,
hope
but
you get what I'm saying. Like, what's
I
yeah,
totally get you. And
yeah,
that's when confidence and boundaries come.
right,
Because I'm a big believer that going on that first date, you need to be yourself.
right. Okay,
You need to be yourself. There's no sugarcoating or nothing, wear something comfortable, be yourself. And at the end of the day, if that person accepts what you have to say and who you are, then great. If not, you move on. The
right,
thing is, a lot of people go into that first date uh, thinking that that's the one, and you don't have to go on another date anymore. But as they say, you got to kiss a lot of frogs to get your prince. And I'm not saying to go out there and go crazy on dates and stuff, but basically, you need your own boundaries as well.
right,
For myself, I put everything on the table. Not like I'm gonna vomit all these things that I happen in my life kind of thing, but if you do have sort of, I don't want to be rude, a mental illness or
right,
something that happened, like you said, your spouse died, years ago, something, that is, it's good to have that up front. Because if you go 3 or 4 dates down the road and then all of a sudden you mention that, well, guess what? He's probably going to run or she's probably going to run. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
if you disclose that up front, then you have more chances of they want to know more about you as a person, not what you have.
right. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I think in general, I think most of us are aware that
Hmm.
the reason why we don't ever open up about something, usually, in my experience, is some kind of um, assumption based around
Hmm.
some kind of fear, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, if I say that I don't have a lot of money, or if I say that I'm in debt. So it's not just the
Mm-hmm.
and again, with the language, right? It's like mental health challenges,
Yeah,
whatever it
for
is,
sure.
right? I mean, it's so much more common now. And sure,
Yeah.
some people are in denial and don't, whatever. But I guess I'm thinking of like a fairly self-aware person who's
Mm-hmm.
maybe gotten some help, and then they're like, oh, I would like to, not be alone the rest of my life. What do I do with like telling people? Because yeah, you're right, you want to be yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
your identity is not like 100% wrapped up in whatever diagnosis you have. That's a, a subject for another
Mm-hmm.
day. Like,
For sure.
right, you're just aware of, because then it's like, oh, if the person doesn't call you back, and then you're like
Mm-hmm.
telling them about your cool podcast or whatever, you're like, well, that's why I didn't get a call back. No, it's not. It's like acting. It's like, oh, they just didn't like my audition. Okay, see you later. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I
Uh,
agree with you. It's like, yeah, because see, for me, I got a diagnosis and people who listen to the podcast, I've already told the story like 100 times, but 2007. So for like 15 years, I'm
mhm,
36 now, right? So it's like, okay, so I've been dealing with this for a while, and yeah, it's tons of ups and downs and bumps, and um, I did really well for like 6 or 7 years, and then I had relapse just around the same time that you are when COVID anyway. And it's like, so it's not like, oh, I'm just totally awesome all
mhm,
the time, but um so let me ask you this question. Okay,
mhm,
this is like a really big, or this is just a curiosity. So what is the this is a really big question. I don't even know how to say this. What is the difference between, so I think a lot of times with relationships and life, there's obviously like a lot of information. I mean, I guess if you're not on social media, you might not be bombarded with stuff, because it's like, if you're on Instagram, you kind of curate your own sort of feed. So it's like, if you
mhm,
want to understand relationships and people, then you're going to follow those people who are like putting that stuff. You get it, right? And then sometimes it's a little too much, right? It's like,
yeah.
whoa, every day there's some opinion and video on
Mhm,
codependency or boundaries or whatever. But sometimes a lot of times I'm like, what is the difference between like healthy behavior
mhm,
and then like unhealthy, right? Like, what it when it comes to like being in relationships with people, right? I think sometimes, I mean, that's a big question. So it's like,
mhm,
how do you learn how to be healthy? Because I think everybody has a past, right? They
mhm,
have a childhood, and then for a lot of us, we don't, unless we go through like maybe like a rock bottom experience where we see a
mhm,
therapist and we're like in a lot of pain, we might not recognize like, oh, I actually, you know, am disrespectful towards women, but I didn't even realize it because no one ever
mhm,
pointed it out to me until 10 failed relationships. Or anyway, I don't
mhm.
know. I guess it's a big question. Like, do you just try to just teach people what's healthy, or is that something that comes up in your business? Obviously, you're a coach, not like a therapist. So,
Yeah. And that's why I teach what I teach, the confidence and boundaries and date with money, because it's important in a relationship as well. A healthy relationship for me is communication. Like for myself personally, communication is very important. When you're open with the other person about everything, talk about everything, and not hide, just be yourself. I think that's a healthy relationship. Now, unhealthy relationship, I guess if you're gonna hide stuff and lie and all that stuff, then that's not a good relationship to be in. So that's why I teach what I teach, because I think it's important to have those core values as a foundation to be able to have that healthy relationship in the long run,
Yeah.
if that answered your question.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's good. Yeah, and that's kind of a real general thing of like,
Hmm.
well, what's healthy? And it's sort of like the I don't know who told me this. Maybe it was my youth pastor, but he was like, you know, the people who make like money, right? The
Hmm.
real dollar bill or the, the real currency, you study the real dollar bill
Hmm.
more than you study like the fake one. So
Yeah.
that when something's fake, you already know because you know the real thing. So
Yeah,
it's kind of like that. It's like you just focus on like what is healthy. So then when
absolutely.
something's unhealthy, it's like easily detectable. Okay, so what do people? Okay, here's the question. This is well, everybody's belief around this would be different. I was gonna
Hmm.
ask you a question about sex because, like,
Hmm.
do you think that if because I guess I'm kind of borderline like millennial slash Gen Z. I don't know what I am, Gen Z or like I'm right on the border because
Along the lines, yeah.
yeah, I was recently recovered a bunch of like old I used to film everything with my friends, but this was
Hmm.
before we had phones. So I graduated in 2004. And so, Facebook wasn't until a couple years later. So I
Hmm.
have like, hours of like literally like a camcorder footage where it's like kind of glitches and stuff and I was like, yeah, well, if we had phones, I wouldn't have been filming all the time, right? So I'm like right at the border of but I feel like okay, so people who are younger seem to
Hmm.
be more not committed to like waiting until they're married to have sex or getting wanting to get married kind of all together, right? Like just people who are young.
Hmm.
And so do you find that is that something that comes up with people where it's like people don't really want to wait till marriage to have sex and they just kind of jump into that right away? And is that like
Hmm.
a good thing or are people really like the traditional like, you know, I don't know, I guess depends on who you're because you said one of your books was people over 40.
Hmm.
So I'm like, anyway, so maybe I'm asking a question of like people who are younger, maybe that's more of a problem. But like, what's your opinion on that? Do you think sex makes things more complicated? Because usually that's been my experience, right? So,
Um,
um,
I think that depends on where a person is coming from,
right.
really. I mean, if somebody's looking to meet somebody to have a life with, then it's
Hmm.
totally different. They're willing to wait. My rule is between 60 to 90 days. Get to know the person first, and
Okay.
then do what you have to do. If you want to be intimate, and that's fine. But for me, people that jump in bed right away, they tend to that's not the first thing you want in a relationship. Yes,
Right.
it's the cherry on top, it's part of it, but I think a person needs to get to know the other person a little better before. That's my opinion, and that's how I think. So, in from experience. And
Okay.
yes, I've been on dates where that's what they want, and that's it. And I say, well, it's not for me, and see you later kind of thing.
Right.
So,
Right.
so,
Yeah, especially on the first day.
yeah. So yeah, it's not a so that's why my book talks about, what women really want and looking
Mhm.
for, and what men are looking for. Because through the evolution of men and time, men were always hunters.
Right.
So men are pretty much always on the lookout kind of thing. And as I explained to you earlier with the fishing,
Hmm.
theory kind of thing. So that's basically how men are. But for me, 60 to 90 days is
Okay.
that's how I go by. So I think it's healthy, and I think it's important you get to know that person a little better, and then I don't know, it makes it better, I think, at the end, because it's like a cherry on top, because everything is going good, and so. But kids nowadays, it's I don't know. To me, that's why I don't believe online dating. I've tried it,
Okay.
experienced it, don't like it. And simply because there's too much choice out there,
Right. That was
you
gonna be
know?
that was gonna be my next question. Um, I know, so these are really big questions. Sorry, I'm like
It's okay.
online dating. That's a
I'll
huge.
answer.
Yeah. So you mean you've tried? Because well, I mean, I can tell you about my experiences with it. I remember reading. Uh, I don't think I have the book anymore. I think I took it with me to one of my hospitalizations and I gave it to someone and they kept it because
Hmm.
you're in a hospital, like you shouldn't give people stuff. So
Yeah.
anyway, but the book was called Alone Together, and it's about like technology. It was written by this like MIT professor, and she was talking about how like kind of the sort of psychology or whatever, the experience behind swiping when
Hmm.
it's like actual people, right? Like we're looking at people who, you know, in are people in real life. But when you're swiping constantly,
Hmm.
he was talking about how it's kind of like a dehumanizing sort of experience where you're kind of getting numb to like forgetting that the person is I'm summarizing like you're not aware that that's like a real person. It's just kind of this you're interacting with it almost like it's like entertainment. And I think
Absolutely.
after a while, if you like on apps for a long time, you're just kind of getting like you can see and there's tons of beautiful women on there, right? I
Hmm.
don't know if women feel the same way about the guys, but
I
right?
don't think beautiful will be the
Well,
word, but
yeah, and
handsome probably, but yeah.
yeah, no, I'm being funny. I'm being funny 'cause,
I know.
look at the my yeah. Anyway, um, so yeah, is it kind of like that where it's sort of this tension between like too many options, and then if you saw that many beautiful women in a room, which you can if you go to
Hmm.
like a club or a party or whatever,
Yeah.
would you have the same? It would be different, right? You'd be like, well, I'm not walking over to that person. You know what I mean? Like, I'm too short,
Too
or whatever.
intimidated.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, well, that's real life. But then there are stories, which we all know the stories of like, well, I met my husband on eHarmony or whatever. And then it's kind of like, I think for a lot of people, there's like, you could be cynical towards that, right? You're like, oh, well,
Hmm.
that's just like the weird, lucky 3%. But everyone else, it's like this miserable experience. And then most people are weird or not real, or like any girl who looks like a supermodel. I'm like, what are you doing on an app? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's totally different. For me, like I said, that's why confidence is very important, because if you feel intimidated and there's so much choice out there to pick from, and if you're confident enough, you won't be thinking of, will she like me, or he likes me, or, am I good looking enough for that person? You know what I mean? So in person, for me, is better, especially, and it's something I don't see many people do, is having hobbies, going
right,
out.
right.
Either, I don't know, or go grocery shop, for example. You bump into people, you see people. And for me, meeting somebody like that have more chances of finding the right person, because it's just one you're looking at,
Hmm.
and not having to sit there and browse through so many, because you get to a point where, okay, well, I like this one on this one, but I don't like it on the other one. And, you can't pick and choose. You got to find somebody that connects with you, that's like you, kind of, you know what
Right.
I mean?
Right.
So meeting in person or having hobbies and going out or golf or play some kind of sport, you get to meet people that are on the same, like for me, I love tennis. So,
Nice. I like
and
tennis
if
too.
I
Yeah.
go play tennis, so I get to speak with a lot of people, right? People that like the same things as me. So you have something in common right there, right? So you have more of a chance on meeting the right person that way than you sitting at home and swiping, because you don't have that personal experience yet.
Right.
But if
So
you have that
yeah.
in the beginning, it helps a lot.
Right. So kind of if people complain like, oh well, right, in my circle of, I go to work, I go to
Yeah.
church, I go to pick up, or what, like a lot of times we do the same kind of 4 or 5 things like over and over again in life,
Hmm.
right? It's like I go to the same coffee shop every,
Yeah.
so it's like if you're not, yeah, so then the question's like, where do you um like the scene in Hitch where they do like the speed dating thing, right? And they're like
Yeah.
rotating around, right? It's like wow, seems like you're desperate. But I don't know. I've never done that. Maybe you do meet somebody in
No,
10 seconds. I'm kidding.
I've I've never done, and I don't think I want to. I think that's not a good way to meet
Yeah,
somebody.
20
Like you say,
seconds.
yeah. I mean, if a person is confident enough, has that confidence
Yeah,
in them, and a big thing as well is you got to love yourself and you got to be okay with being by yourself. Because once all those things are in place,
right,
then you attract the right person into your life. So, for example, if you go to the same coffee shop, well, maybe there's a girl there that you see every time you go there and you
right,
want to talk to, kind of thing, but you don't know how to approach.
right.
Well, this is where that confidence comes into play, and being yourself, and and start a small conversation. You know
Yeah,
what I
that's
mean?
perfect. I like
So,
that. Yeah. Well, yeah, the barrier of it's much, I think, just like anything that's online,
mhm.
right? Like it's sort of it's easy to be like a double agent, right? Like
Yep, they can
right,
put whatever
the
stuff they
duplicity
want
is,
on there.
yeah,
Yeah,
just in general, like you can make
yeah.
comments on something and it's like, would you really say that in real life? Like it's much easier to, which is why it's very dangerous a lot, I think,
Hmm.
without like self-control, to
Yeah.
really just like if someone says something that you don't like or you disagree with, it's easier to kind of turn on this almost persona where you seem like you're tough and you have thick skin, but you probably wouldn't do that if you were like in person with them. You wouldn't say, well, I think your opinion's stupid, man, or whatever. And then that's why you just like, I just deactivate. I did send you a friend request, but I
Hmm.
usually
Oh,
deactivate.
did you? I'll have to look.
Well,
I
no,
haven't I
I,
haven't been on
I
Facebook too much,
no,
so
you're good. No worries. I hide my account a lot, so maybe you won't see it. But I just am like, oh man, I can't. Anyway, but I totally agree. It's like anything online, we're so used to that now, or we have
hmm.
been for over a decade, and so it's just you have to kind of check yourself and be like, hey, am I really being like who I really am? Would I really do this? And so yeah, I think all right, so let me ask you this question. This is
Hmm.
I like the self-love thing, but do you find that like women do sometimes women ask you like, is it okay, this sounds kind of strange, is it okay to for a woman to like ask a man out or like pursue a man, right? Now in the age of like,
Hmm.
we know that things have changed. I want to be careful how I talk about women, but like women go and whatever, do the same things men do, or and like, is that a question that you get? What do you think about that, or are you kind of more say what like a lot of people say, which is
Yeah, I do actually. I have women who are confident enough to go up to a man and basically start small talk and go from there. So
right.
again, going back to that foundation,
Yeah,
if you're confident enough and you have your own boundaries,
right.
um, you have no issue. A woman has no issue going up to a man. I've done it. I've done it myself.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I didn't know he was married, but that didn't go nowhere. But hey, I do. I have.
That's awesome.
And a little story behind that. Growing up, my sister and I are 2 years apart, and she was always been the not the tomboy, but she was always been very outgoing, so she could
Okay.
talk pretty much to anybody.
Okay.
And sometimes we go for walks in a small town back home, and on the road sometimes we see guys going by on bikes, and she would kind of wave and stop and start talking to them, and me being the shy one and scared of men and talk to them, I kind of just step back and let her finish her talk so we can continue our walk kind of thing
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
So but now, uh, going through my three abusive relationships, and it made me grow a little more, and turn into a person I am today, a better person, of course, and realizing all those things that I've done, that I didn't do, that I should have done. I should have focused on myself first and
Right.
heal myself first and work on myself first. Set that foundation before moving on to a relationship. And so that gave me the confidence to, yeah, I can walk in a room and I can pretty much talk to anybody. I have no issue. You
It's
need to
awesome.
have that sort
Yeah.
of kind of confidence. So when you walk into that coffee shop, you have that confidence to go talk to that girl kind of thing you've been seeing every day, sort of. Just an example.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I like what you said earlier about sometimes people call it like chasing versus attracting,
mhm,
right?
yeah.
So if you're like, yeah, if you're not maybe ready is not the right word, but like, yeah, if you're not like at peace with yourself and I guess healed and like
Hmm.
just like once you're content to not have someone, like,
Hmm.
oh, well, that would be nice, but I'm actually would be fine by myself, like you said, oh, being okay with your being alone. If you, once you get to that, then you're not really actually looking for someone, but then that someone tends to like show up. I'm not saying like every time, but for most
That's how
people,
you
that's their
attract.
story. Yeah,
That's
they're
how
like,
you
oh,
attract.
right.
Yeah.
Once I kind of surrendered to the process of not
Hmm.
really being like, motivated by like anxiety or a fear of being alone,
Yep.
because that doesn't that means that then you're not okay with being by yourself.
That's right.
And it's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard as you
It
get
all starts
older,
with
right?
you. So.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I like how you said that because that's I'm trying to work on that honestly myself, where it's like, oh, instead of, you know, um I have a long personal history of, and I've talked about a little bit on the podcast, but like, yeah, just meeting people online and
Mhm.
whatever, doing okay at that, but then it's like it's not real life. And then I've showed up to a couple of real life. I went to like a singles night at this church a couple months ago, and I'm kind of like, wow, this is a lot different than
It gets to be a chore, let me tell you.
so
You
no,
don't
no,
want
it
that.
was good. It's, I mean, I'm a person of faith and I love
Mhm.
church, and it's like I think if whatever you believe and you join the community of what you believe, it's like, yeah, that's probably most people's default, right? Oh, I believe in
Absolutely.
God,
Yeah.
so I should find someone at church. And then you go to church and it's, historically it's more women than men, so there's lots of options for things.
Here's a big one for you.
Anyway,
Here's a big one for you. Have no expectations. Because
have
I
no, yeah,
think, because I think a lot of people doing the online thing, I
Right.
think they're expecting to just bump into, the right person and have that expectation of that person being the one kind of
Right.
thing.
Right.
Even in person, when you meet somebody in person, have no expectations. Just have a normal conversation, be yourself, have that confidence, and everything will be fine. You'll find the right person, because if
Yeah.
that right person likes what they see and feel, then yeah, it
That's
could be the
awesome.
one. But yeah, have no expectations, because I think people go into dating expecting something out of it, and you shouldn't.
That's awesome. That's cool. Well, okay. So thank you so much for talking today. I know when we were emailing, I was trying to think of like how to fit this into mental health, but then I'm like, it doesn't really matter. We can just do a talk about relationships. And I know we touched on that like a little bit. Like I think everything that we said can translate over into like um people who have a diagnosis and maybe they just
Hmm.
it's a hard thing, right? You're not always thinking I want to be with someone. That's not your first
Hmm.
thought usually, right? Your first thought is like, how do I survive? Right? It's a
Yeah.
lot. It can be. And the hope would be um that not that that's necessarily bad, but that the hope would be like over time, you wouldn't always feel like it's just about
Hmm.
survival or staying alive. And um I do think people with the diagnosis can find love. That'd be a
Absolutely.
right. And I think the struggle and the lie and whatever is, you don't always feel that way. You don't always feel like, oh, I'm worthy of being loved. Because sometimes we, in our humanity and our brokenness, we can overdo kind of the things that we struggle with. And
Hmm.
then that kind of gets sort of enmeshed in like our identity. And it's like, no, you're just a person that you just, I mean, you have these challenges and you have these struggles. You still can like be creative and
Hmm.
be able to love people. So anyway, so now I'm just preaching to myself. So you get it.
No, no worries.
Yeah.
No, I think it's important, and I think mental health is important, and I think mental health has been overlooked, and like we need more people to be there, because a lot of people think mental health is not an issue, and it's a huge, huge issue, I
Right.
believe. And so um, people with that, I think it's a little harder for them to, in the dating side, I suppose. Um, they need a boost. They need a huge, huge confidence inside them, kind of, because they think, oh, I have this, nobody's going to love me and nobody wants me, kind of thing, right? So
Hmm.
it has to be connected with you. I I guess I've never experienced that situation, so I can't speak for experience. But yeah, you kind of opened up more doors for me to help people in that area as well. So I
Sure.
thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, you're a wonderful person, beautiful, and
Thank you.
I really appreciate you talking to me. And um, yeah, so usually I ask people like you kind of said sort of a closing thought. So I was like usually ask people um suicide for me like suicidal thoughts. I almost died from a suicide overdose.
Sorry to hear.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, it was uh anyway, so I just kind of ask people like what is your advice if someone is really really struggling. And it's okay if I know you said you don't necessarily have a ton of personal experience. But yeah, you kind of so I don't know if you have any closing thoughts or if you don't have any closing thoughts, then also where can we kind of get all of your information and follow you? And I'll put all of your info like in the notes and stuff like that, because I know you have a bunch of books and you have a website and you have a podcast. So
I do, yes. Basically for people with suicidal thoughts, I believe that they should reach out to someone, or if you know of someone that that's in that situation, basically get some help for them. They might not want it, but they might thank you at the end
yeah,
for saving their life. So um, yeah, don't uh, push that person away because they're having those thoughts. Be with them, help them, best way you can, basically. So
it's awesome. Thank you. And then where can people find you? You're on, you said you're not on Facebook a lot. You're on Instagram.
I have my Facebook page
Okay.
that I had sent you. I think I have my live table talk on Facebook,
Okay.
and I have my romance books on there as well under my pen name Laura Love.
Okay.
So I have a Facebook page on there as well. So, and I have my own dating success coach.com
Okay.
website. So you can get my book there, and you can also get a free book as well. A free book, 20 Ways to Recognize a Good Partner. So I'll do for sure. Thanks
Cool.
for having me on your show.
Okay. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good
You
weekend.
as well.
I know it's Friday. All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.